Hi, I'm Andrea.
Hey, y'all, this is Courtney, and welcome to the Human Design and Liberation Podcast.
This is a space where we explore how human design and liberation theology intersect with the past, present, and future,
with the intent of sharing the beauty and pain of the human experience to encourage you in your liberation journey. Hey, girl, hey.
Hi.
We are here.
We're back.
I'm so excited. I'm really excited about this episode.
Yay, me too. Me too. It's going to be good.
How are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. It's Friday.
Woohoo.
Yeah. Grateful it's Friday. We just had our new moon in Capricorn, so definitely like feeling that for sure. So I trust the astrologers when they say that there's some lightness ahead now, because the kickoff to 2024 has been weird.
Yeah. Channy was like, yeah, like the year hasn't really started until now. And it really does feel like that.
It really does. Yeah, it really does.
Oh.
Yeah. So I feel good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good, actually. I'm feeling really good. I had a really good therapy session yesterday, which was lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking through some like grounding exercises. I guess one of the things is like going from vacation to back to real life. I think it's like we're programmed to just dive right in and do all the things.
Yeah.
And then we try to do that and our bodies are like, no,
We don't work that way.
Humans do not work this way. This is not the time to be doing that. And so I definitely feel like that caught up with me.
Mm.
But I'm like, I'm really I'm like trying to deepen those grooves in my brain, like those new connections in my brain. It was like, no, that's not what we do. We don't just like dive into the deep end right at January 1. We rest into the new year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a slow, meditative, restful entrance. And the whole family, I think I'm feeling it even from the kids too. They're coming home so exhausted from school.
Yeah.
It's okay to take a nap. It's okay to, be slow. And so we're all learning, trying to grasp that again.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about deconditioning today.
Yes. Yes.
And I love this topic.
Me too. Me too. So excited. You want to kick us off?
Sure. So I think it's important to talk about what deconditioning is to kick us off, because human design is a very specific way of naming deconditioning.
Yes.
And it's a word that gets used a lot in the public space. When we talk about deconditioning in human design, what we're talking about is releasing conditioning that pulls you into your not self. Specifically releasing beliefs, thought patterns, and even energetic patterns, really. When it comes down to it, it's patterns that get lodged in your design, in your centers. And when Ra would talk about deconditioning, he would often start with the open centers, which are the centers that are not colored in on your chart. But your defined centers can also get conditioned. And often defined centers are more challenging to decondition than undefined centers. So they're harder to condition, but they're also harder to decondition.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that
Yes.
with a lot of
Yes, you have.
definition in my body graph. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important to name that because the undefined centers are the easiest place to start. They're like the most obvious. But like you, a lot of people have a lot of deficient definition, and you only have 2 undefined centers. I have a client that has no undefined centers. She's
Wow.
heavily conditioned. She's
Yeah.
very conditioned.
That makes so much sense.
And so the process of conditioning was a lot more traumatic
Mm,
because it takes a lot to condition a defined center.
it does. Yeah. It really, what really stuck out to me about conditioning and deconditioning when I first started learning about human design, and consequently, I think this is the reason why I found you, is because I have a background in anti-racism study and race identity development theory. So that's something that I have deep knowledge of. I've been studying it for years. And that work essentially is the unlearning who society has named us all to be, not just Black identity, but white identity. And then there's others like in the theory, in the study of race identity development, there's also like Latino
Yeah,
development,
absolutely.
Asian American, and all of those layers. And because we live in a white supremacist hegemonic society, we all receive very thorough conditioning around who we are and why we're here and what we're
Yeah.
here to do.
Yeah.
All of us, everyone. And so the idea of conditioning and deconditioning was probably one of the biggest things that I was able to latch on to when I
Mm,
started studying human design, because I was already so aware of the way that other people's desire to define another person
yeah.
e exists.
Yeah. Yeah.
That exists, and that part of growing up, and this is for anyone regardless of how you feel about race or any of those things, all of us go through the process of receiving those messages, following those messages, identifying those messages, and then potentially changing our
Yeah.
relationship to those messages over time.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that was something that I was like, oh, yeah, this is, of course, this makes so much sense. This is real. This is real life. This idea of
Yeah.
making that, just creating, understanding the difference between who you are and who others say you are.
Yeah. 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 And what I think is helpful with human design is that the framework is so specific, right?
Yes.
Your design has attributes and it has many layers, right? Like I often, when people ask me what makes human design different, in my perspective, it is the most complete representation of a human experience that I have seen.
Mm,
And the reason for that is the layers and the complexity. There's a lot of layers and a lot of complexity. And it's both and because you don't
mhm.
need all the layers and all the complexity to be able to live your true self. So,
Right.
true self is your innate just living out the way it's meant to live.
Right.
Not self is the way that you're living out when you're experiencing conditioning.
Right.
And so there's this really simple recipe that is very hard. Do not confuse simple with easy.
Right. Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
it is not easy. It is not easy to
That's
live
just
out
a
yourself.
general lesson. Just
Yes.
hold that all the time.
Yes. Do not confuse simple with easy. Often, the simple answer is the hardest answer. So the simplicity of it allows you to stick with it, allows you to have some stamina for the difficulty. And what's awesome about the simplicity is that it's really clear when you're in your not self, when you are bumping up against conditioning. And
Yes.
just by nature of being a human being who wants to be in true self, you are going to bump up against that conditioning. So the sooner, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode so early in the podcast, is because I want people to understand what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship with your conditioning. You're never going to be completely free of conditioning. That's not even the point.
Yeah.
The point is to release the conditioning that takes you to not self
Right.
and recondition yourself to go to true self.
Mhm.
So just to give an example, if you are, let's say you are a generator or an MG, and your conditioning has you override that knowing of enoughness when you've done enough and you're ready to rest. Let's say it's the 9 to 5 conditioning, or let's say it's a trauma response of not feeling safe if you're not moving, right? There's so many different ways that conditioning of the sacral comes in, but the sacral is such a strong motor that you can power through things. You can move past that knowing, right?
So true.
The deconditioning process is going to bump you up against whatever it is that conditioned the sacral, right? Whatever happened. And most of us, this started when we were little.
Right.
And this is why I think the inner child work is so powerful. And we'll do an episode on that and how that.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Stay tuned for real.
If you can come into the journey with an awareness of, okay, the point is not for me to get rid of all conditioning. That's not possible.
Right.
The point is for me to find the way to my true self through this process. Then when you bump up against that conditioning, because strategy and authority is going to bump you up against it because it wants
Right.
you free of the not self. So you can look at those assignments or those experiences for the wisdom that they're carrying so that you can process it and hopefully remap a cycle
Mm-hmm. Yes.
versus I think a lot of the deconditioning that is not human design centric or not human design related,
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily it doesn't point you towards anything. And we're trying to like decondition from late stage capitalism, or we're
Yeah.
trying to decondition from supremacy culture. We're not necessarily pointing towards, okay, how does it look elsewhere? Now, there are some thought leaders who are doing a fantastic job of pointing us elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like I really love Adrienne Marie Brown's emergent strategy.
Miriam Kaba,
Yeah,
the abolitionist movement does a really good job. Emergent strategy, again, does a really good
yes.
job.
Which I think is definitely, I would say, part of the abolitionist movement. She is
Yes.
definitely
Exactly.
part of it. Yeah. Sonia Renee Taylor does a great job with that.
Yes.
Rechma Menicum. There's many teachers out there who are helping us remember, because the truth is there is a before.
Exactly. Yes, that's 100% it. There's a before. A lot of these lessons and experiences even, because I think I just want to reiterate something that you've already pointed out, is that it's not just verbal. It's not just these intellectual ideas. These are experiences. These are in utero experiences. These are
Yeah.
pre-verbal experiences that all condition us. Rod talks about even like your mother's milk. Like for
Yes.
some babies, that's not the best choice, especially we're mothers. So imagine
Yeah.
us reading that and
Yeah.
thinking about all the women, all the birthing people that we've experienced who've struggled with
Yeah.
breastfeeding, struggled with
Yeah.
those types of things, and
Yeah.
wishing that they had this to read to know that it might not be right for them
Yeah.
or for their baby, and that's okay. And so just reiterating that it's not just something that you were taught in a book. That we're
Yeah.
talking about something way beyond. Conditioning is way beyond that. Um,
And I think when you can come to terms with the fact that the point is not to be free of any conditioning, then you can take some of the pressure off of yourself. Like, for example, if your baby is like cold determination and
Mhm.
you're breastfeeding, and maybe there are some challenges. Like, I remember, and now I'm like gonna have to look up her determination. But I remember when my sister was nursing her firstborn, she would just go on strike and would refuse to nurse
Wow.
for weeks, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Yeah, and she would have to pump all the time, and she would still take a bottle, and that is a thing. Like, there are
Yes, it
babies that
is.
do that.
Yes.
Um, and my 5-year-old at 2 years old, he was like maybe 2 years, 3 months, went on fruit strike and
Oh,
stopped eating
wow.
fruit. And he still will eat very few types of fruit at 5.5. Like,
Wow.
he before the fruit strike, he loved strawberries, blueberries, oranges, like anything I could put in front of him. And now the fruit strike, he would only eat apples. That was the only fruit I could get in him. Now you
Oh,
can
wow.
imagine it is not so good for your digestion to not have any fruit, okay?
Yeah,
Like,
it's true. It's true.
constipation is painful, especially
Yeah.
for 3 and 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
So he would eat those, like, fruit pouch things. He
Mhm.
loves those. It's funny because we haven't had them for a while, but I got some for the 2-year-old recently, and Arthur wants them, the 5-year-old wants them. I'm like, "Sure, buddy, have them, whatever."
Oh, good.
But he's consecutive, and
Oh,
consecutive, they want the same thing, and they want what they want,
that's
and it's and so I think for me, like, having this awareness has helped me know that I am conditioning him. Like, I can't not condition him.
yes.
We're here to be conditioned, but I can condition him to listen to his body. I can empower him to honor his body. I can condition him to really listen to the
Mhm.
way that our body works, to learn the way that his body works so that he feels more autonomy. What are the things that
Yes.
support his tummy? I can intentionally condition him in a way that is going to give him access to true self.
100%. Yes. I love that. I love that. And you actually said a word that I was moving towards because one of the scholars that I love so much, you'll hear her name a lot, Dr. Janet E. Helms. She's a professor and a scholar out of Boston University, and she was on the leading edge in the early 90s of race identity development theory,
Mm.
particularly white race identity development theory. And she wrote this incredible book called A Race is a Nice Thing to Have.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yes, and that's what when she breaks down, there's like a model you can find online, the white identity development theory model. And she said the final stage that she sees a fully realized person, white person, to get to is it's autonomy is what she calls it. And
Mm-mm.
autonomy, and I think actually this is for everyone. This is for Black people as well. I'm trying to remember the charts. But the whole point is to get to a place where you can reflect on where you've been and the values you were taught and the history that you have and the experiences that you have. And then you can also reflect on your own personal values, your own
Mm.
personal, that person that you want to show up as in the world. And then you're able to choose your path forward
Mm.
instead of saying, oh, this is what we've always done. This is how my
Yeah.
parents raised me. This is the path of least resistance. Oh, this isn't my problem to deal with, XYZ. It's about aligning to your inner voice and your core values. And so I love that you said autonomy because that's exactly what the deconditioning process is. It's not about
Yeah.
forgetting or erasing or throwing away where you've been and what those conditioning experiences were. It's about giving back your capacity to choose
Yeah.
between what you've experienced, what you've known, and what your body and what your design is telling you. And that I love that you said that. Like you're conditioning, we're as parents, we are conditioning our kids, but we are conditioning them exactly like you said, to listen to their bodies, to listen to their inner
Yeah.
voice. My little Manny Jen at home, I'm teaching her to listen to her sacral. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm teaching
Yeah.
Elijah to listen to that spleen, that splenic center. And so yeah, we are here to be conditioned. It's not even bad necessarily.
No.
And I wanted to talk about that a little bit too. Just like I read recently and I loved how Ra was like, our conditioning got us here.
Yeah.
Good, bad, ugly. It got us here. It got our
But we're still
ancestors
around.
here. But we're still
Yeah.
here. Survival is
Yeah.
still a thing. It's still,
Yeah.
we're human.
Still a question.
Yes. But I'd love for you to like share your thoughts about this again, just attacking that binary of don't do that, do this kind of
Yeah.
that we can get into when we talk about conditioning.
Yeah. I think that this first layer of recognizing that it's really not possible to be without conditioning.
Right.
Then the question becomes what conditioning points us to true self versus what conditioning points us to not self. And Ra was really clear that not everybody needs human design.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really provocative statement. I think that a lot of creators or thought leaders, whatever you want to call people who are bringing these systems into the world,
Yeah.
take like an evangelist perspective of everybody has to have this.
Yep.
And that was really freeing for me as somebody who this has become one of my systems. Like as projectors, we're here to learn systems. And
Right.
this is one of my systems. And I say one of because liberation theology,
Right.
engineering, I'm an engineer by
Right.
trade, business management, I have many systems. And not fixate everybody having to have human design or
Right.
astrology or business administration or any of my systems. Not everybody doesn't need that. Is helpful. And so when I think of it from that perspective, it's helpful to remember that we are so differentiated. What's healthy for me a lot of times is not healthy for you. Like
Yeah.
I have taste is my determination, right?
Mm.
And you are hot thirst. And so there's times where cold things are good for me and that is not necessarily good for you. But and also there are times when your body is going to want cold things because of that conditioning. And so it's
Right.
interesting to notice what happens when you do the things that you are conditioned to do. Sometimes
Yeah.
you need that contrast to start the
Yes.
process of deconditioning, right? And so when you first learn your design and you learn, oh, like this is healthy for me, this is not healthy for me, you might still want to do the things that are not healthy for you. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That is part of you learning, oh, what happens to me when I do these things? And
Right.
as you refine your process, you will get more and more contrast. So I'll give you an example. Like before coming into design, I was already in a negotiation, I'll call it, with caffeine.
Mm.
I had done nothing weird, but I had done, it's called a standard process cleanse every
Mhm.
year in the spring for 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And for the length of the cleanse, you give up caffeine and you give up alcohol. And alcohol was never a problem for me, but caffeine was always a challenge for me.
Oh, wow.
And as a projector, I have different language around it now. So what I could tell
Mm-hmm.
you 10 years ago when I was doing the or longer than that, I think I started, my first one was maybe, it was either 2012 or 2013. So 10 or 11, or 11 or 12 years ago. So the first time I did it, I literally was in the fetal position for days. Like, yeah, the detox was so intense. And I just thought, wow, like I have to have it. Like my body needs this. And what I have come to understand now, 10 years later, is that as projectors, we are so deeply conditioned in the sacral to push back against, to push past what our physical capacity is. And this is
Yes.
like a survival situation where projectors pre civilization, which they didn't exist until civilization existed, but would not have been able to survive. And so there's
Mm.
this niggling subconscious programming, and caffeine is a substance that really allows us to push past to a certain extent, right? To a certain
Yeah.
extent, because there are times when
Well,
caffeine doesn't even
crush.
get you out of the tired.
True.
And then there are
Yeah.
times when caffeine the pushing past, not caffeine, but the pushing past, which caffeine is a tool for, causes you to get sick or causes other
Yes.
things. So I was probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years into my journey. I had, Everett was like maybe 4 or 5 months. I had been sick so many times since Everett was
Mm.
born. And that was when, I bumped my strategy and authority, bumped me up against this awareness again.
Yeah.
An herbalist I follow started talking about how caffeine is a low grade antidepressant, which you can still find the highlights. It's organic olivia, and the highlights are called Depresso, which I just think is like the best name for it.
That's hilarious. I love it. I stand that title. Oh my gosh.
So
That
good.
is mind blowing.
Yeah,
That
I
makes a lot of
know,
connections for me.
right?
That makes a lot of connections for me that you
So
said.
she is talking about how in Chinese medicine, caffeine is a low grade antidepressant. And when she said that, like my spleen lit up. I don't even know how to tell you. So at this
Mm.
point, we'd been going through all these health stuff after having my second born. And I was like, this is why I can't get off of it. So when you have this awareness, it's okay. And then I checked in with my spleen. I'm like, is it time? And I got to know, like, don't
Oh,
force it. Right.
yeah.
This was
That's a
maybe
big
like,
thing. That's a big
this is maybe
nugget
like
there that
March ish.
you just went by that, but that's such a big nugget. Can you just say that one more time? That you
So
felt the need to change, but you were like, maybe not right now though.
yeah. Yeah. So this is authority. So it's so important when you see something or you come up against something that you want to change or you want to do or
Mhm.
whatever,
Yeah.
taking that moment to check internally with your authority to see, is that for me in this moment?
Yeah.
Because that really connects you in with divine timing. And like I said, I'd been juggling with this. I was drinking. I When I tell you what I was drinking, you're going to be like, really? You might roll your eyes. I was drinking like 2 black teas a day, which is
Oh,
like the
okay.
equivalent of 1 coffee.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me,
yeah.
it was a lot.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling myself until I had
Mm.
the first tea. And I
Mhm.
really needed the second tea to get through the day. And so I don't like that feeling. I don't like that feeling. And so it was already like in my awareness, like something's off here. I probably need to go off. Now, remember, I've been in this relationship with caffeine, been in this negotiation for over 10 years. I know I know how I feel when it's not working
Yep.
for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I like checked in. And again, I had like a 4 or 5 month old and my spleen was like, no. And I was
Mm.
like, okay. So I know I'm going to need to do this soon, but I'm not doing it yet. And then the moment came when we all got COVID. This was spring of
Oh,
2022.
yes.
All 4 of
Yes.
us first, Arthur and I went down with the flu, and then we got COVID on top of the flu. Yeah, and I was like, I had been off. I When you're sick like that, nothing tastes good, and so I hadn't had tea
That's
in a
true.
few days.
I
I was
remember
like,
this.
"This
Yes.
is it. This is the
Yeah.
moment. We're doing."
Because it doesn't have
And
to
so
hurt.
that was the first week of June, almost 2 years ago, and then the awareness of what caffeine is as an antidepressant has helped me see it as a tool.
Mhm.
So I'm not a purist. Like, I have a decaf coffee every once in a while. I have a decaf
Yeah.
latte. I have decaf tea. I still eat chocolate every once in a while. All of those
Yeah.
things have caffeine in it. Chocolate is actually the one I have to watch the closest
Mm.
because it has theobromine in it and it will keep me up in the middle of the night. But I think what's interesting is just that process of coming into the awareness, and then that shifted something for me around, because what I realized is that because I'm pushing past my physical capacity, I'm
Right.
compromising something as a projector.
Right.
So
That's ding, 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 ding. Yes.
my job is to see, and when I'm pushing past my physical capacity, I'm inhibiting my ability to see.
Yes.
And that was something I just couldn't unsee.
Yeah.
If this is my life's work, then I'm my own worst enemy here. Like, I'm not able to bring my full
That
potency
part.
because I'm overriding myself.
Wow.
This is just like an example of deconditioning in action because it's not something that you can turn on a dime. Like the example that you gave when we were just talking about how are we feeling? Like,
Yeah.
recognizing that the body has its own process, and so much of human design is putting the body in the lead. And so
Yes.
having this awareness, oh, like I'm conditioned to do this thing, and then surrendering to the body because the body doesn't want to do what you're conditioned to do, but
Nope.
it needs its
Never.
own process to unwind where that
Yes.
conditioning comes from.
Yes. Oh, you were on a roll, sis. That was so good. That was so good. It's making me think of a lot of things. So I want to go back briefly to mention what autonomy is again. Is autonomy is choice. You're not becoming any specific type of person. Like just and this is probably one of the that's why strategy and authority are so crucial to human design is that I'm going to speak for myself as a generator. I've been conditioned to want to hang up my hat on a label. And this is like some inner work that I've been doing very recently, actually. It actually started last year during the Venus retrograde in Leo. But being very frustrated that I could not hang my hat on a label for myself or for my body, like the things I was feeling in my body, or I just wanted this consistent thing, this label that I could just be this person or whatever. And it's been recently that I've realized I'm not supposed to have there's not a single intellectual idea or label or description of myself that's going to encompass everything of who I am. It's not. That's
Yeah.
I can't, and what I wanted is for that thing to be able to make choices for me, and it can't.
Yeah.
My body is there to make those decisions. And so that's what autonomy is. It's not just about other people. It's not just about your freedom from other people in a relationship. That's not exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about you and everything.
Yeah. Literally.
You and not against, but literally like your body versus your mind. And your mind encompasses so much. It's so powerful. It's literally just one of the most remarkable creations on the planet is a human brain, a human mind. And human design has actually helped me understand that more and more, that my body's phenomenal because it's here to keep me here. You
Yeah.
know what I-
Yeah.
But the mind is this machine that can do so much, that can ask such great questions and come up with such great ideas and bring in such amazing information. But because it can do that, it's really shitty at taking care of me. It's so preoccupied with literally everything and anything else that it encounters, that you gotta have that autonomy, and that autonomy lies in your body.
Yeah.
It truly is the thing that's gonna speak up against all the other ideas. It's gonna be that contrast that you're talking about, the binary, in that sense of there's always another choice besides a choice that the world is presenting in any way that it presents. And
Yeah.
so
And
just like,
the gateway to that autonomy is your strategy and authority.
yes, 100%. It is your every time, like every time though. And I love that you were talking about your experiment, because I've been experimenting a lot with my determination. And one of the things that it's funny is that my favorite food is salad. I love salad so much. And if you follow me on Instagram, you will see what that means. And not these pretty little California salads. They have I remember going as a kid to Golden Corral, and the salad bar was like my favorite. And it would be lettuce, it would be lots of olives, lots of pepperonis, cheddar cheese, all these different kind of vegetables. Like there'd be this much lettuce and like this much toppings, and
Yeah.
then just smothered with that ranch. So I just need you to understand, you
That's
don't
what
get this.
kind of salad we're talking about here.
Yeah, you don't get this little curvaceous body eating like
Like a
alfalfa
rabbit.
sprouts, and yeah, no. These are queenly salad. But they're cold in my mind.
Mhm.
And this is the point, there's a point I'm trying to make here, but I've learned that I'm hot determination. Another thing about being a sacral generator is like a lot of what at least I've read in human design, I've already experienced like 9/10 of what I've read. Like I already know based on my own cravings and my own desires what's good for me. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, totally. I love a cup of ramen before bed.
Mm,
I've loved that since I was little. I love
mm.
soup. I've loved making soups for myself for lunch and for
Everett.
soup and salad.
Everett is also
Really?
hot. Yes. He
Oh,
loves soup. He has loved
the way
soup since he
too.
was 6 months old.
Oh my good. That's
And you know how
amazing.
it started? His babysitter was eating soup and he just grabbed the bowl. 6-month-old soup.
Never.
Nobody.
Never.
No, he grabbed the bowl. Mhm.
I love that. So what I've been doing is experimenting, and exactly what you were saying, experimenting with, okay, start the day with a cup of tea. And I've realized that the more fibrous and cold my meals are later in the day, the harder they are in my digestion. So I start the day hot, and I can start the day even maybe blended with like hot, and I could have like a salad for breakfast with my hot broth or
Mm,
an early lunch of salad and have like hot meat on top, maybe a hot dressing,
mhm,
those types of things. And those, it makes the biggest difference. And exactly like you said about you had to change your relationship with caffeine because it was keeping you from, it was making you miss the
mhm,
cues that you needed to
mhm,
live your gifting. As someone who's sacral, but also having a very sensitive digestion,
mm,
when my digestion is off, when my belly is off, it distorts
totally.
my
Yeah,
sense of that sacral. Like,
mhm,
how can I light up when I'm bloated?
yeah,
That's like a flame to a helium balloon. Like, I don't want anything lighting me up when I'm gassy. I don't want anything like, no, it doesn't matter how what's going on. If I'm if things aren't moving smoothly, I'm not happy, period. I'm not excited about anything, period, until my digestion's right. And so
mhm,
that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about like this optimal connection to yourself. It's like
yeah,
optimizing your connection to
yes,
yourself.
yeah,
And it's also about the experimentation that it allowed me the freedom to be creative about these meals, to like,
yeah.
because I'm a sacral, so if I want a salad, I'm gonna have a salad, and I should have a salad,
You
right?
should. And the thing is hot does not mean hot. Like, hot
Right.
just means room temperature or above.
Yes.
So, when you talk about, like, the salad bar, I think that's a great example because
Yeah.
it's sitting out. It's not, like, straight
Exactly.
out of the fridge. Things that are at room temperature are fine, and when you add
Yeah.
hot meat to it or other things that are
Like
warm,
toasted. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, grilled vegetables or whatever you're adding to it that just
Right.
brings up the temperature a little above room temperature. Or if you are gonna have a salad, make it ahead of time and let it sit out to get to
Let
room
it set,
temperature,
yeah.
and then put your warm dressing on it. That's an easy thing to do is just warm up the dressing. Or,
Yes.
like, one thing I'm experimenting with Everett, my 2-year-old, who is also hot determination, is he really loves granola. And
Mm.
what that Ryan does in the winter is he warms up his milk before he puts it in the granola, and
Oh,
Everett's always going after Ryan's cereal. He's like, "Daddy cereal." Yeah,
you
right?
got me
So
again. That's such a good idea. Such a good idea.
and the thing that's interesting for those that are listening, and I know that you've been checking out Vanessa's account about determination, and if this is an area that you've been in your strategy and authority for a little while and you want
Yes.
to go deeper in, we can link to her account in the show notes because she
That's
speaks a lot
excellent. Yeah.
about determination and environment and view and perspective, which are the 4 variables, the arrows at the top of the chart. But as I talked about in the beginning, this is really just one of the layers of complexity.
Yes.
Um, and so for if you're listening and you're not at digestion yet, that's okay. Like for you, it might just be getting comfortable with waiting, getting comfortable with not initiating.
Mhm, mhm.
It might be getting comfortable waiting for the invitation. Depending on your type,
Yes.
everybody has to wait. Just
That's so true.
it's just
Thank
different
you for
types of
sharing.
waiting.
Yep.
So we probably have to do a whole episode on waiting.
That's gonna be a good episode. Yes, absolutely we do.
And what do you
But
do while you're
yeah.
waiting?
What do you
Because
do while
that's a
you're
whole thing.
waiting? That's a whole thing, and we talked a lot about that, I feel like,
We did.
in the beginning of my journey. But I wanted to go back because 'cause you're right. if you're not here yet, that's fine. And I wanted to add that one more story about how even yesterday or Wednesday, we were talking about this with my determination. You were like, yeah, you learned about this a year ago, but it's taken you a whole year to implement. And the way that your relationship with caffeine was like, yeah, that's
Many, many.
fine that you know this, but it's many years.
Yeah.
There's a phrase that somebody shared with me. Brenda is her name. I went to Bible college and she was a student there too, and we were very close. And I don't carry a lot of great memories from that time. But this is one of the things that really my relationship with her, first of all, was wonderful. But also this phrase, and she said that burden does not necessitate timing. And
Mm,
it's always followed me because I feel, and it speaks so much to what you were saying, that there's going to be things that are like revealed to us, whether that's human design or literally anything else. And we are going to want to immediately jump into
mm,
the deep end.
yeah.
And that is not the only way to integrate something that new into your
Yeah.
life. And
Yeah.
with human design and understanding strategy and authority, that it protects, right? Because
Yeah.
again, going back to the whole point, like our bodies are here to protect us, to keep us alive, to keep us thriving. And so
Yeah.
just because your mind receives a new thing, a new idea, and
Yeah.
you're feeling the rumblings of a connection to that piece of information, it doesn't necessarily mean it's time to drop everything. It's to clear out your fridge
Yeah.
or throw away all your clothes or
Yeah.
stop breastfeeding your baby or any
Yeah.
no,
That's not what it's about.
it's not what it's about. We don't let the ideas lead the way anymore,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes. Yeah.
They're
That's a
great
perfect way of putting it.
information, but we don't let them lead the way. We are still in charge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is incredibly freeing. It's been incredibly freeing for me. And it really has taught me how much more is possible when I let something sit and marinate and wait for my sacral to light up when it chooses to,
Yeah.
about the thing it chooses to light up about, and
Yeah.
then to experience that instead of hearing an idea and saying, let's do it right
Yeah.
now. And I do it. And I don't know what I'm doing because my body's not on board.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. And you don't get the satisfaction.
Yes,
You don't get the satisfaction. And so then you're running on fumes because the
100%.
satisfaction is what brings the fuel for the sacral to continue to burn.
And I'd love for you, because that was a really good segue into, we talked about not self in the beginning and like some
Yeah.
not self themes. And if you feel so inclined, I'd love to hear about what does the true self feel like? Like when you're
Yeah.
in the groove, what does that look
Yeah. I think we talked about this a little bit
We did, yeah,
in
in
one of the,
another
yeah, I can't
mhm,
remember. But really what you want to direct your attention to is your signature. So when you are in true self expression, you will feel satisfaction if you're a generator or MG. You will feel peace if you are a manifester. You'll feel success if you're a projector. And you'll feel surprise or delight if you're a reflector.
mhm,
And the reason that's helpful is as you are navigating your deconditioning process, which Ra says it takes 7 years minimum to
yeah,
decondition. And that is based on the fact that the human body regenerates every cell in the body every 7 years, which is actually a fact that I heard a couple years before I found human design from Deepak
yeah,
Chopra in
oh,
one of
wow.
his books. that he wrote. So I think that is helpful when we think about this time frame and how long it takes to decondition and the body leading the way, to remember that it's based on programming literally in your cells.
Yeah.
And so when we think about, I lost my train of thought with that.
Just that the process and what to look out for as we're
Right. So what's helpful with your signature is that it gives you like real-time feedback.
yeah.
Most often we feel the not self. So the not self is frustration for generators, MGs, it's anger for manifestors, it's bitterness for projectors, and it's disappointment for reflectors. Most often, when we're bumping up against that conditioning, we're feeling the not self.
Mm-hmm.
But, and also, it's important to keep the signature in mind because that's what we're going for. And so, when we have that signature in mind, it allows us to unhook from what supremacy culture says we should be going for,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And that's that autonomy. Like you can't have autonomy when you're still connected in with some external validation for your actions. And so the signature gives you something to look for that is that internal validation, that is that
Yes.
way that you are designed to feel when you are in your true self.
Yes. 100%. And that's really beautiful. Like I've before I guess we were friends from the jump, but before we were this close as friends, I had the pleasure of working with Andrea, and she was my coach for a few months. And she gave me an assignment that I love, the joy list
Yeah.
assignment, which was amazing. Uh, Just picture someone who's just hustled. Basically, that was my life, was hustling with the kids, hustling with marriage, hustling with work, just hustle, work. And someone tells you to make a list of the things that you love to do that don't add anything else to your life but fun and joy, and to prioritize doing two of those things every day. And
The look on your
that
face was priceless.
I was like,
You're like, "What?"
and it's so wild because I had this same conversation or very similar conversation with Soleil last night. But just that, first of all, being assigned that because we love an assignment, a generator. But so being assigned that and then taking it seriously and doing that. And so I started singing in the car more. I started painting. I started making meals separate from my kids. So I'd make my kids their dinner and then I would make something for Dave and I that was actually like delicious instead of just
Yeah.
edible and stuff like that. And so I was getting to feel this satisfaction. I could sit down and eat my meal and be like, oh, so good. Or
Mm.
hear my favorite songs and sing to my favorite songs and feel that feeling of harmonizing and all these things that I love. And it really does. I think a lot more of us need to prioritize creating opportunities to feel our signature.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
but
also, like, noticing. I think the power of
yeah.
the joy list is you are and that's something that I prescribe for every client who is a generator or MG when they start with me. It's always the start
Mhm,
because it gets you in relationship with, number 1, your fuel. Every
mhm.
sacral has a unique fuel. And then number 2, it gives you some contrast, right? Like
Yes.
the satisfaction and the ease when all you have felt is frustration for many years, you start to just not believe that it's possible to feel anything
So
different.
true. It's so true. True. So I think we gave a really good kind of very liberation centered uh, explanation and exploration of conditioning and deconditioning and what that looks like. I just wanted to know if you have any like parting ideas, something that's been in your head that you wanted to share, any parting ideas about conditioning or anything that we've talked about today?
The only thing that comes in is just gentleness,
Mm,
really being gentle with ourselves. And we're so conditioned to be hard on ourselves.
mhm,
And often human design can just be another whip,
mm.
beat
Ooh,
ourselves up. Like, I didn't wait, or here I am frustrated again, like thinking that we're doing it wrong. And that's really not what it's telling us. That's really
no.
not the. And so if you notice yourself weaponizing, because we do that, like
Yes.
we do that just to bring some gentleness back in. A really great tool for that is one that I learned from Liz Hayes, who I know I've talked about in previous episodes. We will have her on at some point. It's really about remembering your goodness. She calls it
Mm,
goodness of you, and just reminding yourself that you're good. You were good the day that you were born, and you are no different today than you were then.
mm,
You are just as good. And that is often like a little reset when, especially when we're talking about hard things. We're conditioned to do things that harm us or
yes.
harm others, hurt other people's feelings, or whatever you're dealing with, just coming back to the goodness of you.
And find people to remind you of your
Yes.
goodness too. So
Yes.
that's my little piece. Oh, this was so good. This
So
was
good.
and fun episode. I really enjoyed this.
And thank you to everybody listening. We love
Yeah.
you.
Thank you for listening. Follow along. And also just be on the lookout for information about the HD Liberation groups, the collective.
Yes. Yes.
That's a awesome space. And it has all the things we talked about and more. Real special little
Yeah.
circle.
Yes. It's coming next month.
Yay.
Yay.
Love you.
Love you.
Thanks, listeners. We'll see you soon. Stop recording. Thank you so much for tuning into HD and Liberation Podcast. We hope you've gained valuable insights into human design and its role in building a life of peace, success, satisfaction, and wonder. If you've enjoyed this episode, please show your support by liking, following, and sharing our podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Your engagement helps us reach more people who can benefit from this wisdom. For exclusive content and to join our thriving community, consider becoming a Patreon member. Your support allows us to continue exploring the depths of human design and its potential for life and community transformation. Stay tuned for more fun, thoughtful, and impacting discussions. Together, we're unlocking the path to a more liberated and authentic life. Thank you for being part of HD and Liberation Podcast.